Jackson Crawford. I teach at the University of Colorado Boulder, previously at UC Berkeley and UCLA. Today, I am back continuing my series of detailed read-throughs of poems from the Poetic Edda. Previously, I did a series reading through Havamal, Odin's Wisdom, as well as Völuspá, the poem of creation at Ragnarok. And today, after polling my Patreon supporters about which poem they wanted to see next, I'm beginning Grímnismál. This was the winner of that poll. Grímnismál is a little bit of a different poem. It has a shorter-term narrative structure. Völuspá sweeps over the entire history of the cosmos, whereas Havamal doesn't have one single narrative structure. Grímnismál is a story about something that happened to Odin. It begins with a prose section, not poetry, that I'll read first before getting into the stanzas. And then we have several stanzas, mostly of Odin revealing details about other worlds and places in other worlds, especially places in Oscar, the realm of the gods. This is a little bit different. People often confuse Grímnismál with Vafthrûdnismál. In Vafthrûdnismál, the lore that Odin and the giant Vafthrûdnir or Riddle Weaver exchange is mostly about the past and the future. It's about other times, whereas in Grímnismál, the lore is about other places. I won't go through all the notes that I went through in starting the Havamal and Völuspá series, because I assume that if you're interested in this, you are also interested in those, and you know what I'm going to say. But just to sum it up quickly, the pronunciation that I use is Old Norse pronunciation, not modern Icelandic pronunciation that's deliberate. And then the runes you'll see on the screen should not be thought of as being the original text. The original text is in the Roman alphabet, but so many people request these stanzas in runes that I've rendered them in Viking Age, Younger Futhark. Elder Futhark was not used to write Old Norse. It is older than Old Norse. All right, here's the prose section that begins Grímnismál. Frá sonum Hraudungs konungs, concerning the sons of King Hraudung. Hraudungur konungur åtti två sonu, het annar Agnar en annar Geröður. Agnar var 10 vetra en Geröður 8 vetra. Þeir eru tver og båti með dorgar sínar að smáfiski. Vindur rak þó í haf út. Í nótmyrkri brutu þeir við land og gengu upp, fundu kottbónda ein. Þar voru þeir veturinn. Kerling fóstraði Agnar en Karl Geröð. Að vori fekk Karl þeim skip. En þá Kerling leiddu þó til strandar þó mælti Karl ein mæli við Geröð. Þeir fengu bur og komu til stöðva fóðurs síns. Geröður var fram í skipi. Hann hljóp upp á land en hratt út skipinu og mælti: Varðu þar smul hafið þig. Skipið rak út. En Geröður gekk út til bæjar. Honum var vel fagnað. Þó var faðir hans andaður. Var þó Geröður til konungstekinn og varð maður ógetur. So King Hraudung had 2 sons. One was named Agnar and the other Geröður. To say one and the other in Old Norse, you say other, anar. Agnar was 10 winters and Geröður 8 winters, i.e. old. Notice that the winters is in genitive plural, so it's old of how many years. The word old, gamal, can be left out. They, too, their tver, rowed on a boat with their tackle, their fishing gear, dorgar sínar, to small fishing, so they're fishing for some kind of small fish. The wind drove them then out into the sea, rak þó út í haf. In the night darkness, í nótmyrkri, they broke against land, they landed, they hit land, and they walked up. They found a hut farmer, kotbondi, a certain one, ein kotbondi. They were there through the winter, þeir voru þar veturinn. An old woman, the old woman, by implication the wife of the Karl, or middle-class farmer guy here, she fostered Agnar, and the man, Karl, Geröð. At spring, at vori, the man got them a ship, fekk þeim skip. And when they and the old woman, Kerling, the woman, so thou Kerling, we have thou, which is neuter or mixed gender, masculine and feminine. So that is the man and the woman. This is a way that Old Norse often expresses multiple people. You have the pronoun that's applicable, and then one of the people, either a name or a noun that's included. So thou Kerling is they, including the old woman. Just like I can say vit Kerling, we too, the old woman, to mean that I and an old woman do something. So the old man and the old woman, they led them to the beach, Strandar. Then, and when they led them to the beach, then the man spoke single speech, einmæli, private speech, secretly with Geirröð. They got a good breeze, their fengu byr, and they came to the harbor, Stóðva, of their father, Fóðursins. Geirröður was forward in the ship. He was ahead of, it's a small two-person boat. And he leapt up on land, and he shoved out the ship, and he said, first of all, let me point out that hrat, that's the third person singular past form to hrenda, which means shove. Just like binda has past third singular bat, hrenda has past third singular hrat. That might not be immediately obvious. And he said, farðu þar smil hafið þig, go where smil, which seems to mean troll women, giant women, some kind of negative female character, although it's neuter in gender, can have thee, can have you. Gosh, listen to me, sound like Shakespeare or Hollander or something. I guess the similar words sometimes do take over, even when it's 1,000 years from my normal vocabulary. Anyway, the ship was driven out, rak ut, and verbs like reka, when they're used of weather, and that is really the subject here, is the weather that's wrecking them, driving them out, driving the ship out. They don't necessarily have to express the nominative. I actually think skip it is probably the accusative here, and we can assume that wind or weather is the unstated subject, as it often is unstated. And Geirröður walked out to the town, or to the farm, Byjar. He was well received. And notice, fagna, to welcome or to receive, takes a dative object, so we still have honum in the dative here, even though it's passive. Old Norse, if a verb takes an object that's not an accusative, takes a dative or genitive object, then when it's made into a passive sentence, you're going to still have that expressed as dative or genitive, even though it's logically the subject. Well, it's not logically the subject, but it's grammatically the subject, like he was taken. In English, you can say him was taken. In Old Norse, as long as that verb take doesn't take an object that's accusative, if the object it takes is genitive or dative. And his father was dead then, Andur. And then Geirröður was taken for king, taken til konungs, and he became a great man, varð ágætur maður. Óðinn og Frigg sátu í hlíðskjálfu og sá heima alla. Óðinn meldi, ser þú Agnar fóstra þinn, hvar hann born við Gugi í hellinum, en Geirröður fóstri minn konungur og situr nú at landi. Frigg segir, hann matnýðingur, svo að hann kvelur gesti sína ef honum þykja of margir koma. Óðinn segir að það in mesta lugi, þá veðja þetta mál. So Odin and Frigg sat in hlíðskjálf, Odin's throne, and they saw around all the worlds, heima alla. Odin said, do you see Agnar, your foster son, fóstri, where he gives birth to, nurtures children with a troll woman in a cave, in the cave, Hellinum. But Geirröður, my foster son, is a king, and he sits now at land, i.e. he is a king who is ruling a land. It's mosquito season here. Frigg says he is a food miser, Nýðingur. He does not give people food. He's not generous with food. He's not a hospitable host. He is that food miser, så matnýðingur, that he torments or starves, kvelur, his guests, gestisina, if he thinks, or if seem to him, þykja honum, too many come, of margir koma. So if he thinks there's too many guests, he'll starve them, he'll torment them, because he thinks, because he doesn't want to share his food. Odin says that it is the greatest lies in mesta lugi. They wager veðja about that matter, þetta mál, about this matter. Notice, so veðja is to wager, Veð is something wagered or pledged, and Odin's eye is called his Veð in Völuspá. This is also, of course, related to the English word wed, because when you wed someone, you make a pledge, and, it's an obvious semantic development. Frigg sendi eskismói sína fúlu til Geirröðar. Hon bað konung varast að eigi fyrirgerði honum fjölkunnugur maður, svo þar var komin í land, og sagði það mark á að engi hundur var svo ólmur að hann myndi hlaupa. En það var inn mesti hegómi að Geirröður væri eigi matgóður. Og þó lætur hann handtaka þann mann eigi vildu hundar og róða. Svo var í feldi blóm og nefndist Grímnir og sagði ekki fleiri frá sér þótt hann væri spurður. Konungur lét hann pína til sagna og setja milli elda tveggja og satt hann þar 8 nætur. So going the other direction, I had a little archaic English earlier, but then I pronounced ekki like it's modern Icelandic. But you just see it a lot more in modern Icelandic than in Old Norse. Now it's the normal negator in modern Icelandic, but in Old Norse it usually means ekki. Ekki usually means nothing rather than not. So Frigg sent her box girl, Eskismói, Fula, to Geirröður. What exactly we should read out of box girl is hard to say. Fula is clearly her servant. She appears in many other narratives too. And she, Fula, asked the king to be aware that a fjölkunnugur, a much-knowing man, but this word is always used to mean magically knowledgeable, so a wizard, did not curse him, eigi fyrirgerði honum. A particular one, that one who saw was there come into land. So a particularly powerful wizard who has come to land, and said it a mark on. Now, in English, we would have to say a mark on him, a mark about him, a characteristic of him. But in Old Norse, often, if the object of that preposition can be understood, and here it can, because it's a mark about this wizard, we can leave out the object of the preposition. So it just says, and she says there's this mark on, but it doesn't say mark on him in the Old Norse. So there's this mark on him, that no dog was so wild, so savage, Olmr, that on him would leap. So no dog so savage that it'll leap on him. So, it's an interesting way to test your guests. But it was the greatest lie in Mesti Hegomi that Geirröður was not food good, not matgood, not hospitable with food. And though he handtakes, so he lets capture that man which dogs will not attack. So in Old Norse, to say let's do something means he orders it done. So he orders that man that dogs won't attack to be handtaken, to be captured. And by the way, that last bit, róða, that means attack. It's an idiom for to attack. That man saw that, but we know it's the man in question because it's nominative masculine singular, is the logical referent, was in a blue cloak that's from Felder, and he called himself Grímnir, and he said nothing more from himself, though he was asked. Þótt hann væri spurður. And you ask someone about something, spurður at, so again we have the at not having a stated object here. And I do maintain, of course, that blor means blue. I've discussed that many a time, and you can read more about that in my dissertation and a couple of articles that are out there. And what was the other thing I wanted to say about this? Oh yes, Grímnir, so that's related to Gríma, mask. So it doesn't seem that he's wearing a mask. Gríma can also indicate hood. It's anything that disguises the face. So I called this shadowed face in my translation. And of course, this is Odin in disguise. The king let torture him, let pinahan, i.e. ordered him to be tortured, to speakings till sagna, so he's tortured into speaking, and to set him, setja, between 2 fires, milli tveggja elda, and he sat there 8 nights, sat hann þar 8 nætur. Geirröður konungur ótti son 10 vetra gamlan og hét Agnar eftir bróður hans. Agnar gekk at Grímni og gaf honum horn fullt að drekka, sagði at konungur gorði illa hann let pína hann saklausan. Grímnir drakk af, þó var eldrin svo komin at feldrin brann af Grímni. Hann kvað. So King Garethur had a son, 10 winters old. So there we actually see that Gamal together with the genitive of winters and the number of winters. So he's 10 winters old, 10 years old. And he was named Agnar after his brother. It may seem odd to us to name your son after the brother you killed, or think you've killed. But it's very normal in Old Norse society for the name of your child to be the name of the most recently dead relative of the appropriate sex. Agnar went to Grímnir, and he gave him a full horn to drink. He said that the king did badly when he ordered to torture him without cause, saklausan. Grímnir drank off, that means he drained the drinking horn. Then the fire was so come, it was so developed, that the cloak, Feldrin, burned off of Grímnir, and he said, and now the poem begins. Stanza 1. Heitir ertu hripuður, og heldur til mikil, gongum kvyr fúni, lóði svíðnar, þótt ek og lótt berak, brennumk feldur hur. Hot are you, fire, hripuður being a poetic word for fire chosen here to alliterate with ages, and rather too big, heldur til mikil. Let me go far, fire. This is the subjunctive of Ganga in the first person middle. Let me go far. And then addressing the fire, funi, another word for fire, related to the word for fire in Gothic, and with a different stem to English fire. Cloak, lothi, is singed, svíðnar, though I bear it aloft, though I hold it up, so he's holding it up above the fire. The cloak burns before me. So here we have the umk. Now that appended umk can stand for mer or mik in addition to being the middle ending. And here this is mer appended to the verb. And when you append umk to a verb, the verb will always get the ending u by attraction to that middle ending. So even though this would be brenner, if we were using the actual normal active ending, that u is being attracted from association with the middle ending, which has a u. So the fire burns before me, fyrir mer, with the mer being the imk that's attached to brenner. Stanza 2, and this is still Odin or Grímnir speaking. Åtta nätter satt ek mili elda her, svo at mer mangi mats ne bauð nema ein agnar, ein skal råða gerðar sonur Gotnalandi. 8 nights sat I between fires here, so that no man, mangi, that's gi, the negative suffix, so that no man offered to me, mer, food, except Agnar alone, nema Agnar ein, who alone shall rule, ein skal råða, the son of Gerður, renaming Agnar, the land of the Goths, Gotna Landi. And of course, it's often just used to mean men of any kind. This doesn't specifically have to take place in a Gothic context. Notice too, råða takes a dative object, so råða landi, not råða land. Stanza 3. Hail skal tu Agnar, alls þig heilan bíður, vera tur vera. Eins drykkjar þú skalt aldrei betri gjöld geta. You shall be whole, hail Agnar. This is a common greeting, especially a very respectful or generous greeting. Agnar, okay, so vera tyr, god of men. Tyr can just mean god, it isn't just the name of the specific god. God of men, of vera, this is like the word in English werewolf. It's a god of men, this is Odin. Bids you to be hail. Bíður, thick, vera, hailon. Accusative because thick, the object of bíður is accusative. You shall never, þú skalt aldrei, geta, better repayment, betri gjöld, of one drink, eins drykkjar, so you'll never be repaid better for one drink. Notice, geta is not often used to mean get in Old Norse as it is in English, but you sometimes see it here, especially in poetic usages. Stanza 4. Land heilagt ek liggja se, åsum och olvum när. En I þrúðheimi skal Thor vera, uns rjúvask regen. A land is holy, which I see lie, se liggja, near gods and elves, när åsum och olvum, near Aesir and elves. And in Þrúðheimr, strength home, shall Thor be until the gods are destroyed. This is a rare use of the sk suffix and an actual true passive in Old Norse. So ryva to destroy, regen subject, shall be destroyed, regen ryvask, till the gods shall be destroyed, till Ragnarok. Stanza 5. Ydalir heita thar ullur hefir, ser gorva salli. Olfheim froi gobu I ordaga, tivar atanfe. So U as in Y-E-W, the tree, dales or valleys, they are called where Ullr has made for himself hefir gorva ser, halls. And gorva is in the accusative plural masculine because it's agreeing with sali. This is an older way of forming the perfect in Old Norse. In classical Old Norse or in modern Icelandic, you would just say gort sali, with gort being the neuter nominative or accusative singular, just used for everything now. The gods, Tivar, gave Froi, which is the dative and the accusative of Froi, Olfheim, the elf realm, in early days, I Ordaga, as a tooth gift, Tanfe, a gift given to a child upon teething. Bur so in thriði, blíð regin, silfri þókðu sali. Valaskjolv heitir veltiser, os I ordaga. Farm, or habitation, is that one the third, which happy gods, blíð being cognate with English blithe, happy gods, blíð regen, thatched, roofed, þókðu, past plural from thekia, to put a roof on, the halls with silver. So there's a third hall following the first and second one that he's mentioned before, thatched with silver. It is called Valaskjolv, heitir Valaskjolv, which a god, os, singular of Aesir, probably referring to Odin himself here, made for himself, ser, veltiser, vela, which is the verb being used here, is typically, it's related to English while, as in W-I-L-E, so do cunningly, but in this case just made or built, made for himself in early days, I ordaga, a word often used for ancient times in the poems of the Poetic Edda, including Völuspá too. We see it in the earliest stanzas there. Stanza 7. Sökvabekkr heitir in fjörði, en þar svalar knegu unnir yfir glymja. Þar þá Óðinn og Soga drekka alla daga glóð úr gulnum kerum. So Sökvabekkr, the sink bench or bank, is named the fourth, and there cool waves, svalar unir, a common phrase in Norse poetry, can crash over. The kenegu is probably kind of a unnecessary word there just to fill out the meter. There they, including Odin and Soga, an otherwise unknown goddess, drink through all days, drekka alla daga, glad, out of golden cups, gulnum kerum. Stanza 8. Glaðsheimr heitir in 50, þars in gulbjarta valhol við of þrúmir, en þar hoptur kus hverjan dag, vopndáða vera. So Glaðsheimr, home of glad, is named the fifth, where, thar s, s being abbreviated to s, that is the earlier form of the word for either is or for who, which, that, where the gold bright Valhall stands wide, Thrumur Vid. And there, Hropter, a name of Odin, chooses every day kus hverian dag, weapon dead men, vopen dauda vera. That word for man, ver, is a very old Indo-European word for man. You might look at vera and be misled into thinking that's the verb to be, but this is the accusative plural of ver, man, which of course is cognate with the Latin root of English words like virile, and of course it's still there in an English word like werewolf, man-wolf, as well as in the name of the world, Verld, the man-age. Now in the Codex Regius, which is what I'm basing my readings on, the next stanza that I'm going to treat as stanza 9 is actually treated as stanza 10 in AM 748 1 quarto, the other manuscript that has Grímnismál. And so a lot of translations reverse the order of these, but I'm just going to read them in the Codex Regius order. So stanza 9. Mjök auðkennt þeim til Óðins koma, salkunni at sjó. Vargur hangir för vestan dur och drupir orn yfir. Much is, and this is a 9th stanza, so I'll read it word by word. Kind of doing that anyway. Much is easily known for that one who to Odin may come, or for those who to Odin may come. Hall visit to see. So it's easy to recognize those who come on a visit to Odin. A wolf, vargur, this is a negative word for wolf as opposed to ulver, which can be negative or neutral, hangs west of doors, för vestan dyr, and an eagle hangs over, droops over. Stanza 10. Mjök auðkennt þeim til Óðins koma salkunni at sjó. Same, first half. Skoptum rann rept, skjoldum salar þakiður, brynjum bekki strótt. So that last half, with spear shafts, I say with because this is dative, is the house, ran, that is the same word that's in English, for instance, ransack from Old Norse, rannsaka, search a house. So with spear shafts is the hall, the house, supported, stood, these are the pillars of the house. With shields is the hall thatched, i.e. roofed, thakidor, and with chainmail shirts, the benches are strewn, they are strawed. So typically, if you want a bench to be comfortable, you put straw or hay on it, but in this case, in this hyper-martial environment, chainmail is what's put onto the benches to sit on. Stanza 11. Thrumheimur heitir in seti þjatsi bjó, så in ómotki jotu. En nú skadi byggvir, skýr brúður góða, fornar toftir fóður. So Thrumheimur is named the 6th, where Thjatsi lived, dwelled, in past tense, that the very mighty giant. In Old Norse you could say that the. You don't have to just choose one like in English. And now Skadi dwells there, Byggvir, that bright bride of God, Skir Brúður Góða. She dwells in the old turfs, Toftir, of her father, Fóður being genitive singular of fadir, father. Stanza 12. Breiðablík eru in sjóndu en þar baldur hefir ser gerva sali. Og því landi ek liggja veit fasta fekenstavi. So Breiðablík, broad views, are the 7th, and there Baldur has for himself, Ser, made halls, gerva sali. Again, we saw this in the previous video. Gerva is accusative plural masculine agreeing with sali rather than just being neuter nominative accusative singular like it would be in later Old Norse or modern Icelandic. At that land, on that land, in that land, Othvilandi, where I know to lie, to be present, Ligya, the fewest fasta Fakenstavi. So bad fate staves, so curses, or perhaps runes of ill import. Stanza 13. Himinbjörg eru in Otu, en þar heimdal kveða valda veum. Þar vorður góða, drekr í veru ranni, gladr in góða mjóð. Himinbjörg, so heaven hills, heaven cliffs, heaven rocks, are the 8th, and there they say, kveða, that Heimdall, accused of singular because they're saying him, and then we have a infinitive of what he's doing. They say Heimdall rules Valda, the holy places, Veum. Valda takes a dative just like Rolda to rule. There, the guardian of the gods, Vorður Goða, drinks in the good house, Ivaru Rani, again that word Ran for house. Glad, he is glad, the good mead, in Goða mjóð. Stanza 14. Folkvangur in níundi, en þar froja ræður, sessa kostum í sal. Hólvan val, hún kys hverjan dag, en hólvan óðin ó. So Folkvangur, that would mean army plain, is the 9th, and there Froya rules the choice of seats in the hall. So again, rather from Roda, that takes a dative plural, verbs of ruling typically does. So she rules the choice of the seats here in this hall. She decides who sits where. She chooses Hon Kus, half the dead men in battle, Halvan Val, every day, Hverjan dag, and Odin owns half, Odin or Holvan. Now, this does not necessarily say that Folkvangur is a different place from Valhall, nor that, even if it is, that the half of the dead in battle that Froya chooses go there instead of to Valhall. But of course, Snorri took it that way in writing the Prose Edda, and so a lot of people have taken it that way today, but this is the only hint we have that Folkvangur is an alternative afterlife to Valhall, and that not everybody who dies in battle goes to Valhall. Remember that the different poems of the Poetic Edda are not necessarily related to each other and can contradict each other. Stanza 15. Gleipnir in tíundi, han guli studur, og silfri þaktur it sama, en þar forseti byggir flestan dag, og svæfir allar sakir. So Glitnir, something to do with the same root that's in English glitter, like a shining, glimmering root, is the 10th. He, the hall being masculine as a he, is studded with gold, studur guli, and thatched, roofed with silver, thaktur, silvery, the same. And there Forseti, said to be a son of Baldur by Snorri, dwells most of the day, or most every day, flestan dag, and puts to sleep, svavir, allar sakir, all cases, all matters of dispute between men. Stanza 16. Nóatún eru in eliftu, en þar njörður hefir serum gorpa sali. Mana þengl in meins vani, hot himbruðum horgi ræður. So Nóatún are the 11th, tún meaning plain, designated flat place where you'd put a house or a farm or something. Of course, this is the same word that becomes English town. And there Njörður has made for himself halls. We've seen this exact phrasing before, for instance in 12, talking about Baldur. Lord of men, Thengil Mana, he is the one empty of faults. The Vani, the empty of fault, of main, which is fault or bad things. He rules, rather, the high timbered altar, horker, meaning altar or cairn where sacrifices, offerings are made. Hrisi vex ok ho grasi, vidar sland vidi, en þar mogur of letsk av mars baki, hröken at hevna fóður. So, Vidar's land grows with brush, hrisi in the dative, and with high grass, whole grassy in the dative. Vithi may be the dative singular of vither, wood, so it's growing with high grass and with brush and with wood. I've also speculated about whether this might be an error for vida, meaning that it's grown widely with high grass and with brush, weeds, or that it is the wide land of Vidar, but I try not to speculate too much. And there, the son lets himself avenge his father, so maybe he's preparing himself to avenge his father, Hefnafolder. Bold, he is bold, fröken, from a horse's back, of Mars Baki, perhaps implying a different version of Vidar killing Fenrir, in which he is horseback, which would be different from both the sword fight in Volaspá and the jaw-ripping exercise where he's on foot that's told of in Vathur the Small and in Snorri's Prose. Stanza 18, this is one of the 9th stanzas, so I'll read it word by word, even though I've more or less been doing that with all the stanzas. Andhrimnir later I eldhrimni sahrimni sodin, fleskabetst en that foir vitu, what einherjar alask, or vid what einherjar alask. The vid is not in the Codex Regius. So Andhrimnir lets Sahrimni cooked in Eldhrimnir. So presumably the verb vera, to be, or verða, to become, to get, is left out here. So Andhrimnir is letting the meat of Sahrimnir cook in Eldhrimnir. If we read the Prose by Snorri, Andhrimnir is the cook in Valhall. Sahrimnir is the pig whose pork the Einherjar, the warriors in Valhall, eat. And Eldhrimnir is the cauldron that pork is cooked in. Now, Hrimnir, that element that's in all those names, could be related to Hreimr, which means noise, or to Hrim frost. Either way, it's hard to see what exactly we should make of these names, as Andhrimnir would be against noisemaker or against frostmaker. Eldhrimnir, the cauldron, would then be fire, noise, or fire, frostmaker. Sahrimnir would be sea noisemaker or sea frostmaker. So hard to make literal sense of these names. The best of flesh, best fleska, the best of fleshes or meats, that of course would be Sahrimnir's pork. But few know it for vitu that, upon what, vid what, the Einherjar, again the warriors in Valhall, the alone fighters, are fed. So few know what the Einherjar eat. Stanza 19. Gera och frekka seder guntamiður róðigur herjafóður, en við vín eitt vopengófugur óðin livir. So, the battle-tamed, or battle-accustomed Guntamiður, victorious Hroðigur, father of armies, Herjafóður, this is Odin, of course, feeds Sether, Geri, and Freki. These are Odin's wolves, according to Snorri in the Prose. Geri is probably related to the adjective ger, meaning hungry, and Freki to the adjective frekker, meaning greedy. So basically hungry and greedy. But Odin lives always, liver vid vin eight, on wine alone. And of course that is weapon noble Odin, vapen golfagur Odin. Stanza 20, a personal favorite. Hugin och munin fluga hverjan dag jormungrund yfir. Og ek of hugin at han after ne kommet en sjómsk mer munin. So Hugin and Munin are Odin's ravens, and Hugi, of course, means thought, so this would be the thought. Munin would apparently be related to Muna, meaning to remember, and so the ravens' names are often translated as thought and memory, which is probably what's intended. They fly every day, flyga hverjan dag, over the great ground, Jormungrund, so over the earth. I fear Omk that Hugin, I fear about Hugin, Omkek of Hugin, that he may not come back. So both the T appended to komi, the subjunctive third person singular present of koma, to come, and the ne are negative, so this is double negated, that he won't not come back, but it means won't come back. Though I see myself, literally, but this is used for fear also, though I fear sjomp more about munin. So I fear that Hugin won't come back, but I fear more about munin, more about memory than about thought. Stanza 21. Þýttur þund, unir þjóð vitnis fiskar flóði í. Orstrámur þykir of mikil, valglami at vada. So Thund is a river name. This is probably from Thenya, or that root meaning to expand, so maybe a flooded river. It whistles or howls, þýttur from þjóta, class 2 strong verb. And Þjóð Vitnir's fish lives in the flood, unir í flóði. Now, Vitnir, which literally means witness, is often used in Eddic poetry to mean monsters. This would be people monster, Þjóð Vitnir, the monster for the people, for the nation. Who is the fish of the people monster? Well, often, including in this very poem, we see supernatural things called not simply by their name, but by name, possessive, and then the thing that it is. So Yggdrasil is often called Yggdrasil's Askr. Fenrir is often called Fenris Ulfr. So this could just possibly be simply Jormungandr as another name for that serpent, Þjóðvitnir, but then it's being called Þjóðvitnisfiskar, and it's a fish because it lives in water. Part of the semantic taxonomy of Old Norse is that anything that lives in water is a fish. So whatever the case, the apparent reference is to Jormungandr. Whether Þjóðvitnir is just another word for Jormungandr, hard to say. But I think so. The river's stream or current, Orstrámur, seems too big, þykir of mikil, for the slaughter crowd to wade. So for possibly the Einherjar to wade. This river maybe needs to be waded by the Einherjar or perhaps by some other group of dead men, maybe the dead men who are on their way to or from hell. Stanza 22. Valgrind heitir stendur velli á, heilog fyr helgum durum. Þorn sú grind, en það fóir vitu, hve hon los lokin. So Valgrind, slaughter gate, gate of the slaughtered, of the slain, it is called which stands on a plain, stendur á velli, holy before holy doors, heilog fyr helgum durum. That gate is ancient, sú grind forn, and but few know it, fóir vitu thought, how she, i.e. it, because grind is feminine, is closed into a lock, lokin I los, i.e. locked. So it's an old gate, but few know how it's locked. Stanza 23. 500 gólfa og fjórum tugum, svo hygg ek bilskirni með bugum. Ranna þeirra ek reft vita, means veit ek mest magar. So 500 of floors, i.e. 500 floors, but of course 100 could mean 120 here. Keep that in mind, although for simplicity's sake and for my own not so apposite math skills, I'll stick with, just translate this as 100. So 500 floors and 40, I think, Bilskirnir, this is Thor's Hall, and then we have to supply a verb like hava or ega to have with its windings, with its turnings, with its corners. So this hall has that many floors if you count all the ways that its convoluted design allows. Of those houses, rana theira, genitive plural, which I know to be roofed, erek vita reft, I know ek veit, my sons, means Magar, because this is Odin talking about Thor, the biggest. So of all the houses which I know have roofs, I know my sons is the biggest. Stanza 24. 500 dura og fjórum tugum, svo hygg ek at Valholu vera. 800 einherja ganga einum durum, þó þeir fara at vitni at vega. So 500 doors and 40, I think that there are at Valholu, vera at Valholu. I think there are at Valhall. 800 Einherjar, again the warriors in Valhall, go out of the the single doors, or enum dorum, probably meaning out of each door. When thoer they go to fight the monster at Vega at Vitni, again with that word Vitnir meaning monster, in this case almost certainly meaning Fenrir, the wolf that will kill Odin, so the one that he wants the Einherjar to fight most of all. Stanza 25. Heiðrún heitir geit, stendur hollu á herjafóðurs, og bítur af læras limum. Skapker fylla, hon skal en skýra mjaðar, knó atsu veg vanask. Heiðrún is the name of a goat which stands on the army father's hall, so on top of Valhall, Odin's hall, and bites from the limbs of Læraðr, a tree. She shall fill, hon skal fylla, skapker, beer barrels, of the clear mead, in skýra mjaðar, and that drink, su veg, will not diminish, with knó being used just to stand in for another modal verb, like mun, perhaps, so will not diminish, vanask in the infinitive. 26. Eikþjörnir heitir hjortur, stendur á hollu herjafóðurs, og bítur af læras limum, en af hans hornum drupur í hvergelmi, þaðan eigu votn ol vega. So Eikþjörnir, oak thorn, is the name of a stag, Hjortur, who stands on the hall of army father, herjafóðurs hall, again on top of Valhall, and bites from the limbs of Læraðr, this tree. And from his horns, and of Hans hornum, drops into Hvergelmir. Hvergelmir is the spring under the root of Yggdrasil and Hel, or Niflheimr, according to Snorri's Prose Edda, and we can read that name as cauldron noisemaker. Hver, cauldron, Gelmir, probably from Galm, noise. And from there, all the waters have their ways. Thadan, ol, votn, egu, vega. And now in stanza 27, we start getting the names of a bunch of rivers, so I hope you're ready for this. I have traditionally been trying to make extra sure that I'm reading or interpreting every word in every ninth stanza. 27, this is going to be tough. A lot of these are river names that don't have very obvious meanings. I'll give meanings or translations for them where it seems reasonable to do so. Síð og víð, Sökin og Eikin, Sval og Gunþró, Fjorm og Fimbulthul, Rín og Rennandi, Gippul og Goppul, Gommel og Gervimul, þær hverfa hod góða. Þunn og Vín, Þol og Hol, Gróð og Gunnþórin. All right, well, Síð would mean long, Víð wide, Sykin perhaps an old or alternative past participle to Sykia to seek, so the sought one. Aiken would mean made of oak. Svol would mean cool. Gunthro, battle trough. Hard to do anything with Fjorm. Fimbulthul would be mighty, perhaps related, the Thuler part might be, Thul might be related to Thuler, meaning orator, a word that often comes up in Hovmal. Rhine would be the Rhine River, so that at least is a real river. Renandi, running. Gomo would mean old. Gervimel, ger is spear. Then we have this parenthetical remark. These, thar, those, flow around Huerva the gold of the gods, hod golda. So rivers are often pictured as concealing gold or treasure in Norse myth and sagas. And then vin could be meadow, if it's a long eye, it could be wine. Hol would mean hall. Gróð could be related to the root in greedy. Gunnþórin, battle daring, something like that. Maybe not all these names are meant to be specifically meaningful. In stanza 28, we keep going with river names. Vina heitir ein, honor vegsvin, þriðja þjóðnuma, nytt og not, non og hron, slíð og hríð, sylgur og ylgur, víð og von, vond og strand, gjol og leiftur, þær falla gumnum nær, falla til heljar heðan. Even fewer of these make a lot of sense. Vegsvin could be road wise. Þjóðnuma contains þjóð, meaning people or nation. Hard to do a whole lot with the rest of these. Von, hope, strand is beach, or like English strand. Gjol could be related to yell, like in Gjallarhorn, so a loud river perhaps. And then at the end, those fall near men, nær gumnum, who fall from here to hell, falla hedan til heljar. In 29, we hear about a couple more rivers. Kormt och ormt och kellaugar tvär, där skal Thor vaða, hverjan dag han duma fer at aski Yggdrasils, því at Osbrú brenn olloga, heilog, voten hlóa. Kormt and ormt and 2 kerlaugs, these Thor shall wade every day, there Thor skal vaða hverjan dag, when he goes to judge han fer døma at the ash of Yggdrasil, so at Yggdrasil, the ash tree. Because the Osbrú, the god bridge, Bifrost, or Bilrost, the rainbow, that's the bridge from Midgard to Osgard, burns brenn all over, all with flame, loga, the holy waters, heilog voten, hlóa. I think hlóa is a hotbox. I think it only occurs here. Some have connected it with the root in English low, as in an animal lows or bellows. Others assume that it must have something to do with fire because the waters are said to be burning with fire, so maybe something like the waters are seething. Well, we've had some river names, now for some horse names in stanza 30. Gladr och gylir, glær och skeiðbrimir, silfrun toptur och sinnir, gísel och kvalhofnir, gulltoppur och lätfetti, þeim ríða æsir jóm, dag hvern þeir duma fara at aski Yggdrasils. So, gladr could mean glad, glær, glass, skeið could be related to the root in actually like the word ski, but a branch or a fence post, something like that. Silfrun toptur, that is how the name is in the Codex Regius. I think it's Silfrun topper in AM 748 1 quarto. If it is topper, that could be something like silver top, maybe a horse with a silverish mane. Gisel could mean hostage, gulltoppur, gold top, so maybe a golden mane. Letfeti, something like lightfoot. At any rate, the Asir gods ride those horses, theim yom, every day, hvern dag, when they go to judge þeir fara døma at Yggdrasil, at the ash of Yggdrasil, the ash tree of Yggdrasil. 31. Þrjár rötur standa og þrjá vega undan aski Yggdrasils. Helbur undir eini, annari hrímþorsar, þriðju menskir menn. So 3 roots, þrjár rötur, stand in 3 directions, og þrjá vega, from under the ash of Yggdrasil, under Yggdrasil, the ash tree. Hell dwells under one, bur under eini, under another, annari, the frost giants, hrímþorsar, under a third, human men, minish men, menskir men. Stanza 32. Ratatoskar heitir íkorni, renna skal at aski Yggdrasils. Arnar orð, hann skal ofan bera, og segja níðhogvi niður. So Ratatoskar, of course, Rat Tusk, is named a squirrel who shall run skal renna at the ash of Yggdrasil. Notice, I said that this was going to happen a lot. Yggdrasil's Asgard. Notice we've had 4 stanzas in a row that have put it in exactly this way. It's very, very prominent description of, or name for the tree in Grímnismál. He shall bear from above, han skal bera ovan, words of the eagle, orð Arnar, and say them, as understood, to Níðhogr below, Níðhogvi neither. Níðhogvi in the dative, so he's the recipient of the words from the eagle. Snorri elaborates and says that Ratatoskar runs up and down the tree, telling the eagle's insults. The eagle sits at the top, telling the eagle's insults to Níðhogr the serpent below, and then taking Níðhogr's replies back up to the eagle on the top. 33. Hirtir eru og fjórir, þers af hafingar og gaghósir gnaga, dóin og dvalin, dunor og duraþror. Stags, bucks, are also 4, so there's also 4 bucks, who upturned necks, gaghósir, gnaw on, presumably, the tree. What's going on with Havingar, or why Av is there in the second line? no one knows. Havingar is a word that's never been satisfactorily explained. And then we have the names of the 4 bucks or stags: Doin, Dvalin, Dunor, Durathror. Doin could mean dead, Dvalin could mean delayed, the others are a little harder to do anything with, but it's interesting that those first 2 names are also given as the names of dwarves elsewhere. 34. Ormar fleiri ligja under aski Yggdrasils, en það of hyggi hver ósviðra appa. Góin og móin, þeir eru grafvitnissinnir, gróbakkar og grafvolúður, ofnir og svofnir, hygg ek at askili, mates kvistu mó. All right. More snakes, or worms, or serpents, or dragons, legless creatures, fleili ormar, lie under the ash of Yggdrasil than any of the unwise apes, this can be foolish people or potentially specifically giants, think, hyggi, know it, hyggi that. And then we have the names of these snakes, Goin and Moin. Those are Gravvitnir's sons, again with that Vitnir meaning witness literally, but monster in poetry, so Gravvitnir would be something like grave or dig monster. Gróbakkar, grayback, and grave volúður. Ofnir and Svofnir, which are interesting names because those are also taken by Odin later in Grímnismál when he is giving a list of his names at stanza 54. Ofnir could be related to oven, and Svofnir to sveva, to sleep. So maybe the heater and the sleep maker. I think that they always shall, hig ek at, and then they is understood, at always, skili shall, and the subjunctive scrape is more, somewhat uncommon verb, the branches kvistu of the tree, of meidr, mace. So those snakes will always be damaging the tree Yggdrasil. 35. Askur Yggdrasils drugir erfiði meira en menn viti. Hjörtur bítur ofan en á hlíðu fúnar skerðir níðhogar neðan. So Yggdrasil's ash tree endures drugir difficulty erfiði more than men know, meira en men viti. A stag bites from above, hjörtur bítur ofan, and on the side, ó hlíðu fúnar, flames. And níðhogar lessens or damages skerðir from below, neðan. Stanza 36, we get Valkyrie names, and this is one of these 9th stanzas, so I'll do my best to explain these Valkyrie names. Hrist og mist vil ekkat mer hornberry, skeggjold og skogul, hildur og þrúður, hlokk og herfjotter, gól og gerolol, randgríð og róðgríð, regenleif, þær bera einherjum all. So Hrist could be related to Hrista, shake. Mist could be just what it sounds like from mister, meaning mist. Skeggjold, beard age or axe age. This is also one of the things we're warned is going to come before Ragnarok in Völuspá 44. So curious. Skogul could be related to Skaga, to project. Hildur, of course, common woman's name or Elman woman's name, meaning battle. Þrúður means strength. Hlokk could be related to hlaka, a special verb for eagles screaming. Herfjotter, to, well, her's army, war. Fjotter could be related to fjotter, the masculine noun meaning chain, or just possibly to the specialized poetic word fjotra, meaning woman. Gól could be related to the word noise that we see, for instance, in Gjallarhorn, the yeller horn. Gerolol is hard to explain. The olol might be some kind of error. Just possibly, this could be an error for something like Ger Skogul, which is in the names of Valkyries in Völuspá 30. Notice how different those names of Valkyries are than the list here in Grímnismál. Randgríð and Róðgríð. Rand is shield, Róð is counsel. If Gríð is a short eye, this could be truce. If it's a long eye, it could be eager, which is probably more likely. So shield, eagle, and counsel, eager. Regenleif, divine survivor. Those there bear, carry, bring to the Einherjar beer. So fantastic names for the Valkyries, and with a note that they are the waitresses of Valhall. Orvakkr og Alsvíðr, þeir skulu upp heðan svangir sól draga, en þeirra bógum fólu blíð regin, asir Ísarnkól. So, Orvakr and Alsfither, they shall up from here, up heðan, they are slender, svangir, and up from here they shall drag or draw, move the sun, sol. And under their shoulders or withers, bogum, the happy gods, blíð regin, hid, folu, that is the third person preterite plural from fella, to hide. The asir, another word for gods, the iron cooler, Isarn Kol, the bellows. So we have these two horses, Orvakr and Alsfither, who draw the sun from here, quote unquote, and under their withers, the gods hid some bellows. Now, it is interesting to note that this word Isarn is a very archaic form of the word for iron in the Germanic languages. Typically, in Old Norse, we see Jorn, but Isarn is almost identical to the Gothic word. And this poetic form of the word for iron occurs mostly in poetry. Stanza 38. Svol heitir, han stender solu fyrir, sköldur skínanda góði. Björg og brim, ek veit at brenna skulu, ef han feller I frå. So, it is named, he is named, she is named, heitir, Svol. He, all right, that gives us a masculine identity. He is named Svol. He stands before the sun, stender, fyrir solu. A shield, skjoldur, for the shining god, skínanda góði. This is for because skínanda góði is dative. Now it's interesting that Svol should be masculine. Clearly we should read Han here because the manuscript has the typical Old Norse abbreviation for he, Han, which we see all over the Poetic Edda and so many other manuscripts. It's an H with some extra doodles on it. Svol, however, looks like the feminine form of the adjective svalr, which means cool, which would make sense as some kind of a shield that protects the earth from the sun, based on what we see in the last half of the stanza. The rocks and surf, björk och brim, I know that they shall burn if he falls from there. We can provide. So often the object of the preposition isn't stated in Old Norse. So I know that those things will burn if he falls from there. And ifro, in from, very common expansion to the simple preposition fro, and in fact it's almost standard in a lot of dialects of Swedish and Norwegian. Stanza 39. Skol heitir Ulfr, fylgir skýr leita góði til varna vidar. En annar hatti, hann þróð vitnissonar, så skal fyr heiða brúði himmins. Skol is named a wolf who follows the bright-looking god, again talking about the sun, for defense of wood, or to the defense of wood. So follows the sun till it reaches the defense of woods, i.e. the trees, when it sets in the west into the forests. Clearly written from the perspective of someone who doesn't live on a west coast. But another is Hati, and Anar Hati, he is son of Hroðvitnir, a name that we know is Fenrir's. Hroðvitnir, Vitnir we've seen before actually in Grímnismál, meaning monster. Hroð means famous, so this is famous monster, and it's a reference to Fenrir. That one shall before, so shall go before. So often verbs of movement are not expressed in Old Norse, especially in poetry. That one shall go before the bright bride of heaven, heiða brúði himmins, which is again the sun, because the sun is feminine. Different people have interpreted this different ways, based on how Snorri describes this in the prose Edda. My general reading is that Skol is following the sun and is going to eat it, but Hati is going before, in front of the sun and is going to eat the moon. And this represents the myth of eclipses. Stanza 40. Or ymis holdi var jord skopuð, en or sveita sær, björg or beinum, badmar or hori, and or hausi himin. Out of Ymir's flesh, or Ymis holdi, was earth shaped or created. And here we have of course, a common filler word in Old Norse poetry. But out of sweat, sveta, from sveti, this often means blood in poetry, so we should probably read it that way. But out of his blood, the sea, the hills or rocks, out of bones, tree, out of hair, and out of skull, heaven. Stanza 41. En or hans brom gerðu blíð regin, Midgard, manna sonum. En or hans heila voru þau in harðmóðgu sky, ól skopuð. And out of his brows, or eyelashes, the happy gods, we see this again, as in a previous stanza, made Midgard, the world of men, the middle enclosure for the sons of men, i.e. for human beings, men. And out of his brain, they made the clouds, ski, were all of the hard-mooded, so the sort of evil or tough-minded clouds were all shaped. Stanza 42. Ullar hylli hefur og allra góða, where tekur hustur of una, því at opnir heimar verða ósasonum, þó hefja af hvera. So let me start with line 3. Who takes first on the fire? Now remember that Odin, or Grímnir, in this context is imprisoned between fires. And to take on a fire apparently means to put it out. So whoever first puts out the fire, this is Odin, kind of switching out of his trance of seeing all these worlds and speaking of his own situation for a moment. Whoever puts out the fire has the favor of Ullr, this little-known god, and of all the gods, ok allra goda, genitive plural. And then the last half of the stanza is pretty unclear, because open worlds or open homes happen for the sons of Aesir, so for the sons of the gods, so for the gods, those who lift off boiling kettles. So what's strange is that it seems like the favor, the open worlds or open homes, comes to the gods, but he's asking a human, presumably, since that's the person he's talking to lift off, to put out the fire. But there's no boiling kettle that we know of in this situation. There's possibly something corrupt about this last half of the stanza, something that's gone wrong in its transmission to the manuscripts in the 1200s, 1300s that we first find it written in. Stanza 43. Ívaldasunir gengu í ordaga, skíðblatni at skapa. Skipa betst, skýrum froi, nutum njarðarbúr. Now in the Poetic Edda, none of the poems actually tell us in detail about the creation of the gods' treasures. But this is told of in Snorri's Prose Edda in the part called Skóldskaparmál. And we know that the dwarves that made many of these treasures were the sons of Ivaldi. So Ivaldi's sons went in early days, the Ordaga, to shape or create Skíðblatnir, the best of ships for bright Freyr, the useful son of Njordr. And that does parallel the story in the Prose Edda. Stanza 44. Askr Yggdrasils, han utstur viða, en skíðblatnir skipa, óðin ósa, en jóa sleipnir, bílrost brúa, en bragi skólda, hóbrók hauka, and hunda garmer. So, Yggdrasil's ash, and we've seen it referred to this way before in this poem, rather than just as Yggdrasil, the ash tree of Yggdrasil. It is because the ash tree is masculine, the best or noblest of woods, i.e. of trees, and Skíðblatnir of ships, Odin of Asir, i.e. of gods, and Sleipnir of horses, Jóa. Bifrost or Bifrost of bridges, and Bragi of poets, Holbrook of hawks, and Garmr of dogs.
Nafn mín fleiri en vindar, heiti mín fleiri en bannar. That is how I might translate Odin, or Mr. Wednesday's claim in American Gods, that I have more names than there are winds, more titles than there are ways to die. Hi, I'm Old Norse specialist Dr. Jackson Crawford. I teach Old Norse, Norse mythology, and related subjects at the University of Colorado, previously at 2 campuses of the University of California, and I have been the Old Norse language consultant on American Gods, the television show, Season 2, Disney's Frozen, as well as other upcoming major feature films and television programs. In today's video, what I'm going to do is look at the last stanzas of the poem Grímnismál in the Poetic Edda, in which Odin recites his various names in the presence of King Geirröðr, who has kept him captive over a period of 9 days. 9 is a sacred number in Old Norse, and we see in many other instances that Odin is associated with it, such as when he sacrifices himself to himself for a period of 9 nights on the world tree Yggdrasil in the poem Álfamál, something that, of course, happens much later in the novel American Gods with the character of Shadow. I'll begin with stanza 45 of Grímnismál, picking up where I left off on my stanza-by-stanza read-through of Grímnismál about 6 months ago. Now I hope that those who have been waiting for this completion of that series will understand why I have waited. And if you would like to go back and watch all of those videos to get a full read-through of Grímnismál, there's a link in the card on the top right. So here's stanza 45. Svipum hefi ek nú ypt fyr sigtífa sonum, við það skal Vilbjörg vaka. Allum åsum það skal inn koma, ægis bekki á, ægis strekku at. This is Odin speaking throughout this poem. I have now lifted ypt, my appearances for the sons of the victory gods, for the gods. Oftentimes in Norse poetry, the gods are called sons of gods, just as men are called sons of men, giants are called sons of giants, etc. The implication seems to be that now he's revealed himself in the sight of the gods. The gods now know this is Odin, if they might happen to be watching what's happening down here in Geirröðr's court. With that, at that, shall desired help Vilbjörg awake, vaka. It shall come in, það skal koma in, before all the gods, all the Asir, Ollum Osum, on Agir's benches at Agir's drinking occasion, drekku, from drekka, a feminine noun meaning drinking occasion. Agir is the host of the gods' feasts. I like to call him the gods' MC. And now, having said this, having revealed himself to Geirröðr, as well as to any other gods that might be watching, Odin begins reciting his names in stanza 46. Hetumk Grímr, hetumk Gangleri, Herjan och Hjálmberi, Þekkr och Þriði, Thunder och Uther, Helblindi och Hor. I have called myself Hetumk Grímr, masked, Gangleri. Ganga is to walk, leri, probably related to lar, thigh, or leg, so like walk leg, wanderer. Herjan, warrior, Hjálmberi, helmet bearer, Þekkr, famed one, Þriði, third one, Thunder, looks like the English word thunder, which is actually cognate with the Old Norse name Thor. This is actually probably related to thenya, to stretch, Thunder then meaning the stretched one, perhaps in relation to the tale of Odin's hanging on Yggdrasil, on which occasion he was stretched at the neck by the rope he hanged himself from. Úðr, wave, helblindi, hell-blind, and hor, meaning high one or potentially one-eyed one. The ambiguity is because hor typically means high. It is cognate with Gothic house, Gothic being a more basal Germanic language, if you will. But Gothic also has an adjective hax, which would be cognate with Old Norse hor, if that adjective is in fact what we're seeing here, and that would mean one-eyed, if it's cognate with that Gothic word hax. Stanza 47. Sadr och svipal och sangetal, herteiter och nickar, billoiger, baloiger, bolverker, fjolnir, grímur och grímnir, glapsviðr och fjolsviðr. Truth, Sadr, and swift, svipal, and true father, true begetter, sangetal. Herteiter, battle merry, hnikkar, angerer, a name he uses in the poem Grímnismál in the Poetic Edda. Billoiger, curse-eyed, boloiger, fire-eyed, bolverker, evildoer, fjolnir, spellcaster, magicer. Grímur, that's masked one again, just as in stanza 46, and grímnir, the one that goes masked or with a shadowed, hooded face. This is the name that he uses in Grímnismál. That's why the poem is called that, the words mál of Grímnir, the masked or shadowed face, hooded face. Glapsviðr, sviðr means wise. Glap is added often to adjectives and nouns to indicate something that is foolish or that is wrongly done, some kind of mistake. So we could take this as meaning effectively unwise. And then fjolsviðr, much wise. So he's both unwise and very wise. These are names of his. Stanza 48. Síðhottur, síðskeggur, sigfóður, hniggúður, alfóður, valfóður, atríður og farmatýr. Einu nafni hetum aldregi, sits ek með folkum fór. Long hat, long-brimmed hat, síðhottur. Long beard, síðskeggur. Sigfóður, this could be victory father, or if my hypothesis is correct, that father actually relates to the Old English verb fadian, Old English of course being closely related to Old Norse. This might instead, victory father, be victory orderer, victory ordainer, victory arranger, something like that. Prepared for war, hniggúður, all father, or all arranger, all ordainer. Valfóður, father of the dead on the battlefield, or perhaps arranger, ordainer of the dead on the battlefield. Atríður, the rider, presumably rider of a rope, as they talk about being hanged that way. And farmatýr, that means burden god. Tyr meaning god, also the name of a specific god. And farmar meaning burden, almost certainly also relating to Odin as a hanged god, because the one who hangs is the burden of the gallows or the hanging tree. I called myself Hetumk, never Aldregi, by one name Einu nafni, since I went among people, sits ek for med folkum. Stanza 49. Grímni mik hetu at geradar, en jolk at osmundar, en þó kjallar kjolka dró, thror thingum at, oski og omi, javen hor og biflindi, gondlir og horbarður með góðum. They called me Hetumik, Grímnir, there's that name again, just as in stanza 47, at Geirröðr's place, where he is right now, but Jolkr, gelding, at Osmundar's place, and then Kjallar, when I drew the sleds, erek dró kjálka. Thror, mighty, at things, legal assemblies in the Norse world. Oski, wish granter, and Omi, probably something to do with speaking, so perhaps speaker, orator. Just as high, or just as one-eyed, Javan Hor, and Bivlindi, shaker of shield shaker. Gondlir, probably another one for something to do with wandering. And graybeard, Horbarður among gods, með Gotham. Of course, Horbarður, graybeard, is a name he takes in the poem Horbarðsljóð, Song of Graybeard, when he confronts his son Thor in disguise as a ferryman. Stanza 50. Svíður og svíðrir ek het at sökkmímis, og dulða ek þann in aldna jotun. Þó ek miðviðnisvark ins mera burar orðin ein bani. Svíður, wise, and svíðrir, wisener, wisdom granter, something along those lines. Which I was named het at Sökkmimir's place. Sökkmimir, we know from Ynglingatal, is the name of a Jotun or giant, which he says in this next line too. And I deceived that aged giant, ek dulða þann in aldna Jotun. When I was, þó ek vark, the K at the end of var is just the word ek, I again. When I was become orðin, the single killer, the one killer, ein bani, of the famous son of Miðvidnir, ins mera burar Miðvidnis. We don't know who Miðvidnir or his son is. Many of these refer to tales that simply have not come down to us in any preserved source. 51. Allur ertu geróður, hefur þú ofdrukkit. Miklu ertu hnuggin, þú ert mínu gengi. Allum einherjum og Óðins hilli. You're drunk, allur ertu gerður. You have overdrunk, you have drunk too much. Þú hefur ofdrukkit. You are much deprived, ertu miklu hnuggin, when you are, and then understand the word deprived here, when you are deprived of my aid, mínu gengi. When you are deprived of the einherjar, those are the warriors who were in Valhall, Odin's hall, Valhalla, and Odin's grace or favor, Óðins hilli. Possibly, Ollum einherjum in the dative in line 5 there is an error on the part of the copyist of the manuscripts. This is in 2 manuscripts in the Codex Regius as well as AM 748 1 quarto. We would expect that to be genitive, perhaps, allra einherja, so the favor of all the einherjar, rather than just that he's deprived of the einherjar, because why would he be deprived of them as people? So there could be a copyist error there. If what I'm saying is right, then it would be you're deprived of the aid of the einherjar and of the favor of the einherjar, in addition to Odin's favor and aid, and that seems to me to make a little bit more sense. And that's the kind of copying error we see fairly frequently in these manuscripts. Stanza 52. Fjóð ek þér sagða, en þú fót mant, of þig vela vinnir, meki liggja ek se míns vinnar, allan í dróira drifin. I said much to you, ek sagða fjóð þér, but you remember little, and þú mant fót. Friends betray you, deceive you, trick you, vinnir vela þig. I see my friend's sword, ek se míns vinnar maki, lying liggja, all driven in blood, allan drifin í dróira. Stanza 53. Eggmóðan val, nú mun uggur hafa, þitt veit ek líf liðit. Varar eru dísir, nú knottu Óðins sjó, nolgats þú mig ef þú megir. Now, Yggur, one of Odin's names, something like the Terrifier, this is quite a common name for him, and also the one that we see in the name of the tree he hanged himself upon, Yggdrasil. Now, Yggur, Odin, will have, mun hava, a blade-injured dead man, Eggmóðan val, Gerður himself, who's about to die on his own sword. I know your life to be, understand the verb to be, past. So, ek veit þitt líf liðit. Your dísir, spirits that accompany one in life, are wary, eru varar, Now you know to see Odin, nu not to see Odin. So now Gerður knows that the one he's talking to is Odin. Approach me, någats du mig, if you can, ef du megir. Stanza 54. Odin ek nu heiti, yggur ek óðan het. Hetumk thunder fyrir það. Vakar og skilvingur, vofuður og hróptatur, gautar og jólkar með góðum. Ofnir og svofnir ek hygg at orðnir se, allir af einu mer. I now am named, call myself Odin. Earlier Odin was named Yggur. I called myself Hetumk Thunder, stretched again before that. Waker, Vakar, and Killer, Skilvingur. Waver, perhaps something like confuser, or this could again refer to him being hanged. And orator god, Hróptatur. Gelding, Jolker, and Gauter, father, progenitor, something like that, among gods. Heater, Ovnir, related to oven, and Swovnir, sleepener, sleep maker. These might refer to the stories in the story of the saga of Hrólfr Kraki, which Odin heats and makes sleepy the army of King Hrólfr Kraki of Denmark on one of their journeys, which I think ek hygg, that may be used all at se orðnir allir of me alone, of mer einum. And that ends the poem, but there is a short prose note at the end, as at the end of many of these poems. Gerður konungur satt og hafði sverð kné sér og brugðit til miðs. En hann hörði at Óðinn var þar kominn, stóð hann upp og vildi taka Óðinn frá eldinum. Sverðið slapp úr hendi honum, vissu hjálpun niður. Konungur drap föti og stöttist áfram, en sverðið stóð í gegnum hann og fekk hann banna. Óðinn hvarf þó, en Agnar var þar konungur lengi síðan. King Gerður sat and had a sword upon his knee or knees and drawn to the middle, so it's halfway drawn out of its scabbard. And when he heard that Odin was come there, var kominn þar, he stood up, hann stóð up, and wanted to take Odin from the fire. Odin has been imprisoned between two fires for these 9 days. The sword slipped out of his hand, and the hilt pointed down. The king tripped on his foot and stooped forward, stöttist áfram, but the sword stood through him, í gegnum hann, and he got his death. Hann fekk banna. Odin disappeared then, and Agnar was king there long afterward. Agnar being the young son of Gerður, who was kind enough to bring Odin mead at the beginning of Grímnismál, in citing him to recite the various lore that he recites before he gets to his name at the end of this poem. Well, I hope this has been a somewhat informative or interesting look at the names of Odin and at Grímnismál and Norse literature and Odin more generally for you. I have also translated the entire Poetic Edda, of course, that's been available since 2015, as well as the Saga of the Volsungs. And in September 2019, my translation of Hávamál, which is accompanied by the Old Norse text as well as a full commentary on the Old Norse text, will become available. That will be called The Wanderer's Hávamál, and will give you, I think, the most comprehensive and definitive look at the poem Hávamál that there has ever been in English. I make these videos for free in beautiful places, but I do that on top of 2 full-time jobs, teaching and writing, and about 4 part-time other jobs. So my Patreon supporters do a lot to help me keep doing this, and if you haven't checked out my Patreon before, I hope you'll consider doing that and dropping a couple bucks in the can every month to help me continue to do this. For now, from beautiful Colorado, I'm wishing you all the best.